Good morning, thank you. And thanks for those opening comments, and great opening comments from Jim McDonald as well. We have a really strong link at National Grid with Strathclyde University. A large number of our graduates come from Strathclyde and are instilled with Jim's wisdom as they go through that. So you'll see that through some of the conversation we have today. And thank you so much again for investing your time listening to this panel. As I'm the Digital Strategy Manager for National Grid Electricity Transmission. We're the part of National Grid that owns and operates the network. So 4,500 miles of overhead line, 300 substations, 900 miles of underground cable across England and Wales. And we see capturing, utilising and sharing with our customers and stakeholders as absolutely critical to delivering net zero and reducing the impact of climate change across the world for us all to learn from each other. So today, Cavendish Group have put together an amazing panel on democratising and contextualising your data, how to effectively digitise grid assets. So we're going to talk about big trends we need to keep our eyes on that could directly impact our businesses, and how we can direct investment, etc., in the right way to deliver for that net zero target. And what a great topic to be starting with, Adam. I take my hat off that data is the first thing that we talk conference like this. It probably wouldn't have been like that a couple of years ago. As Adam said, though, please use the chat box throughout this. I'll introduce the panel in a second, but please put any questions, comments through this. I'd love to make this more of a live conversation rather than just having questions and answers at the end. So without further ado, let's Andreea is the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at E.ON Romania, leading their digital transformation, data strategy and information technology. She has over 14 years experience in global telecoms as well. Thierry is the Group Chief Analytics Officer at ENGIE, supporting group entities in their data transformation. And he previously ran data innovation labs at AXA Insurance and was data management lead at Accenture for over 15 years. Philipp works for Google as an energy and utilities key accounts executive, supporting previously held roles with DXC, Behr and HP, amongst others, all around driving digital transformation journeys. And Lasse is Vice President of Renewables and Utilities at Kongsberg Digital, heading the company's efforts in smart grid digital twins. And he spent his entire career formulating digital strategies, projects and in business development. So I think we've got a really strong panel today to answer this area of the conference. So I think let's open out with a wider question than probably many were expecting. So why are we doing this? What's the business case for improved data, digitizing? Is it still a challenge to get business cases through in the companies or the clients you're supporting? So I don't know if anyone from the panel wants to start us off. Lasse, I know you had some opening comments that you wanted to talk about this on the business cases.
Sure. I think I would like to address this from the grid operator side of things, which is close to our business, obviously at Kongsberg, where we're helping heavy asset industries on their digitalization journeys. I think perhaps the most obvious value driver we see in these business cases, which is relatively easy to see at the start, is obviously efficiency, automated processes, freeing up time for engineers, customer representatives, and analysts with the grid operator. But I guess the bigger buckets of value and also the more long-term effects are grander. I think, like limiting obviously outages, losses in the grid. We will need to build new grid in scale for sure. But in the meantime, we need to make sure that we utilize the grid we have better. Obviously, digitalization as well, done right, it will have an impact on how customers view the services provided by these grid operators. And lastly, and perhaps most important, is making sure that the grid becomes an accelerator for the much needed energy transition and these future energy systems we talk about, and not a roadblock or hindrance to that. Speed is of the essence here, And digitalization will be a key piece of the puzzle here. We have seen in our work that these grid operators struggle to handle the new challenges faced and a more complex grid. So I think digitalization also is about, reimagining how the grid operators work, bringing the data, the people, and the knowledge together.
Absolutely. I think reimagination is probably a key word that will come up today. We're in an industry that might have disruptors into it and might have other parties that are coming into it. I mean, Andreea, you're obviously at the heart of this at E.ON and are driving this. What, from your perspective, sort of become easy to get business cases through and to drive the digitalization and data agenda at E.ON, or is it still a challenge?
Hello, please let me first say hello to all of you, and I would also like to address a welcome to all the ones that are actually listening to us today. Thank you for really taking the time, and thank you for having me as part of this panel with so valuable panelist colleagues. Yes, indeed, at E.ON, indeed, we are also in the center of all this transformation, I would say both from a group headquarter perspective as well as from an regional unit, right? Because I do represent, in this case, Romania as part of all this digital transformation. And here in Romania, we operate on two segments. We have the distribution, so the grid side, as well as the customer solution, the supply side. And I have to say that this transformation is something we have started already 3-4 years ago from two important reasons. One is actually the market conditions, which are constantly challenging and changing as well. Both markets have been liberalized now, both gas and power, and on the supply side we see a lot of competition. We see a lot of new players coming with disruptive competitive pricing, and of course, as a traditional legacy player, you really have to reinvent yourself to be able to remain in the game. And the second aspect is also the changing, the continuous changing of the consumer habits, right? I see that our customers, even the traditional customers from energy and gas, are now becoming more sophisticated. They want more and more easy interactions with us as their supplier. And of course, that brings challenges also on the grid side, because on this side, I have really noticed that our networks are evolving towards intelligent platforms, which are going to carry on in the future, not only this complex mix of energy, but as well as some data streams. So in this respect, to be able to prepare your grid actually for all this transformation, which implies digital data transformation, it is quite a challenge for a pure traditional DSO. That's why, in this respect, we have been really fighting over the last 1-2 years to actually increase our investment budget to really focus the direct investment in the area of grid modernization and digitalization. And I would say that the automation of our distribution system has been already pointed out some very nice cases. We have already I would say a lot of smart meters implementing actually. So I would say that by the end of this year, we're going to be already at almost 350,000 smart meter installed across the country. And in this way, actually, I would say more than 25% of our distribution customers will be smart clients. Of course, this is not going to stop here, because our aim is to continue the implementation of our smart meters. Romania is also, I would say, maybe a special case, right? Because if you look into other Eastern European countries, that might be a bit more advanced when it comes to smart metering. However, we take into serious this challenge, and we aim that by the end of 2028 to cover more than 50% of our grid customer with smart meters. We all know the benefit of this. This is, I would say, just one example. And we are also using a lot of European funds project to which we want to modernize and better integrate in the system all the transformation station towards our SCADA network. So these are only a few examples that we kind of already have, and they are implemented, and of course goes very hand in hand with the digitalization journey and the data transformation that we are running also on the other segment, on the supply segment. So regardless of the business case, I would say that everyone is pretty much aware of the benefits that such automation and digitalization for the grid is actually bringing, and to be able to anticipate all these challenges which are coming, as I said, from market perspective, but as well from the regulatory side, because this business here in Romania, it's actually quite heavy regulated, and we have to be also very careful and very flexible in front of all these regulatory requirements. We have to invest in automation of not only on the grid side, but I would say also in our internal processes, the way we do reporting, the way we communicate this data flows towards authorities, and so on. So at least at the company level, both board and even top down, the messages have been well aligned, and I think we are now well equipped to face this grid modernization and digitalization.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andreea. And I think the change in consumer habits is something that we're seeing across the board, isn't it? Across in all countries, and seeing engagement with their meters and sort of engagement with that. But it's how we continue to keep engagement with those consumers that are, may have that first smart meter, that first app, but then actually sort of get to time. But Thierry, let's move over to you in terms of some of those challenges. So Andreea touched on some of those challenges about the huge amount of new data, I suppose, that's coming in from all of that, and the extra amounts of paths that data is taking, and the utilization of that data. How are you seeing it in ENGIE, and how is that? How are you facing those challenges and supporting your clients with that?
Yeah, thank you, David. Hello everyone. Really pleased to be in this panel, and also welcome to all the people joining this conversation. So yes, indeed, the data is really important, and as we move forward, we see that we receive more and more data. And the way to manage it is also really important. So at ENGIE, what we are trying to do is actually to come up with solutions that helps different entities to bring all together their data and to actually get value out of it. So it's really important that we bring data, we democratize access to data in a way that everyone can actually know what are the data that we have at a group and how we can leverage them. So actually we are pushing and trying to get some people connections, and to ensure that we do collect this information in a way and actually make it available for everyone, and this is bringing value at the end. If I look at the figures, I see that we have something like more than 300 use cases developed over the last 2 years by our different business units, and I think it's really important. And more importantly, we also have some use cases that are actually lift and shift. So actually developed somewhere and used in different BUs, different business units, and this is how we would like to build our solutions, because ENGIE is quite a decentralized organization, even though we know we are trying to centralize it a little bit more. It's true that we have a lot of businesses in different countries, and data transformation needs to break the silos, right? And I think for me it's one of the biggest obstacle for us to get value out of our data. On top of that, we are also trying to bring value and to measure the value that data brings. It's also really important to ensure that the adoption of everyone in the company, starting from the leadership teams, just to ensure that they see the value. So of course, data has a cost, and we shouldn't deny it, we shouldn't hide it, but also it has value, and this needs to be captured in a proper way so that we see why we are doing all that. And to me, it's really important, and there is some kind of data advocacy that we also need to work on, so that not only we are delivering value, but also we show that there is value, and we can actually build on top of that.
Thanks, Thierry. I think let's pick up on data advocacy later in our questions, but I think, Philipp, let's move over to you. I think some of the points that Thierry and others were making there about getting the value out of data, obviously the services that you provide at Google, how do you support your clients in sort of understanding the value of that data, getting the data onto the right platforms, etc., and sort of what are you seeing as the challenges of getting data and digitalization?
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone, from my side. So first of all, Google Cloud stands for making the world smarter with data, which is exactly what we're talking about today. And we have the luxury just to be the technology provider, providing the ingredients, the engine and the tool set to do the job you guys and you were talking about that. And I think you touched some very valuable points of how to combine a revolutionary world in the way the art of what is possible today. I think we've seen a revolution in technology in terms of what machine learning can do, what analytics can do, how fast machines are, that we can analyze raw data real time right now. So that's really a revolution in the last couple of years. And that's a bit in contradiction to the evolution in the brownfield scenarios all the energy providers are in. So I think balancing the challenge of evolution of the existing landscape and the revolution of what can be done is one of the challenges. And what we see in discussions is that clients suffer from limited budgets. I think that's something you also said, Andreea. And that very often companies start with a bottom-up approach on certain use cases, just analyzing certain things or checking the technology out in a certain area and then try to leverage that. And I think what we can provide from a Google's perspective with a view from technology is also to have in mind the top-down approach, the holistic way, what you can do if you really analyze your data from a company's perspective end to end and leverage it and really get the long-term yield later on.
Fantastic, thank you. So I think just a little pivot in the conversation. So back to Thierry, you've been involved in data-centric roles for your entire career, from what I can see from your background. So what has made you tackle this subject? Why do you stay? And what do you think the sort of capabilities needed for the future are?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I actually, why did I move to utility? This is your question, right? I think it's a really interesting area where we can actually see that it will move. Utilities and overall speaking, energy is in the middle of a huge transformation. And I guess that this is where we can bring a lot of opportunities as well. So I'm not really scared about how this will change, and I'm really happy to see that that's going to change. And I'm sure that data, analytics, digital will be a good drivers for this change. So this is why I think that I'm really interested in this area, and this is why I also joined ENGIE 2.5 years back. And why is important? Because I think everyone understands within ENGIE that we need to change the things. So the way we were doing the things in the past will not continue forever, right? So there is people are aware, but they will have to change and to adapt themselves to the new to this new era. And when it comes to data and digital, this is really the first thing that you need to do is to ensure that your people are ready for change, because there is so huge part of the equation which is linked to how people will receive and actually act upon this new digitalization of their activities. Then indeed you need to ensure that your people are onboarded and ensuring that they will let's say be with you. So it's important to me to notice that, and at ENGIE we know that the change management is really important, and the democratization of data is also extremely important. I can share with you my thoughts on some use cases where we actually bring together things and delivered use cases and value. But I think the main point for me is that we need to bring technology and in a non-intrusive way. So if you want, the less you change the habits, the better it is. And to me, because it will be faster to adopt and easier. So for instance, what we are trying to do is I will take only one example. So we are developing a machine learning algorithm to fight against fraud. So in the past fraud analytics, so we analyzes, we were investigating files, one after the other, without any data support. And with machine learning, we are able to spot customers with suspected fraudulent activities and to allow the fraud detection teams to investigate further. So we use as data source and technology individual client data, behaviors, social networks, client proximity to pass fraud trace. And of course, the benefits are that the automation, pre-qualification, it goes very fast, and it brings value. And the way we delivered it is that we actually plug this solution and this fraudulent activities or suspicious activity directly onto the investigation systems, so that people could actually see the fraudulent activities rate and could take action on top of it. So based on that, and so we don't have to go through a really difficult process to actually get this information, and we deliver it where it needs to be delivered at the time it needs to be delivered. And so it's really the combination between new technology and how this can help you and on your day-to-day activities, and also ensuring that you're really connected to the existing processes, so that you at the end you bring value. So this is one of the examples, but there is so many. As I said, there is 300 use cases that we are working on at the ENGIE at the moment.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think so many across all of our companies, aren't there? And I think prioritizing them is important, isn't it? And how we actually attack these and sort of go at them. Andreea, over to yourself. But I suppose back to the skills, Thierry, I think ENGIE have about 2,000 data roles. I was quite interested to see. Andreea, how are you setting yourselves up for data governance and supporting the sort of large amount of data that you're producing from your new sensors and new pieces of equipment, etc.? And how is that supporting your digital efforts?
We have been setting up actually a few years back in 2018 when I actually joined E.ON Romania, a big data sanity program, which is actually covering both the distribution and the supply segment. And of course, you can ask yourself, you know, in such a modern era that we are actually playing, is there still the need to sanitize your data in the system? Well, unfortunately, it is, because we did find out that in system like CRM, we didn't have the right contact data for our customers, right? Or even in the sales process, there were still agents on the field which were keeping their contract in a pure, you know, paper document rather than inserting and filling in the data in the system. So this was actually one of the major challenges we did identify a few years back. And this is where we decided we're going to really now create a data governance program which will cover the sanity side, right? So we will have to run a cleanup check of all our data in the system, but in the same time keep a strict governance on the way we operate with this data, and, you know, the system report we will then provide towards the business. So I did set up this structure. Of course, from a skills and capability perspective, this is not something always easy, because we are lacking inside the organization the data skills, and we had to look into this from two angles. Upskilling some of our existing resources, so providing them, you know, specific training on the data, exposing them to a bit of a more industry-related data topics. But we are also in the position when we had to recruit external, you know, from companies which are a bit more advanced in terms of their data strategy. So this is how I actually created this data governance mix between internal capabilities that were upskilled and then a bit of external blood, I would say. And since then, the data governance program is actually working pretty well. On the customer solution side, we are actually even more advanced, because we manage now finally a data warehouse program in place to deliver automated reports regarding different segments. So we get real-time data now on all our energy and gas consumptions point. We also know, you know, customers which are using our value-added solutions, because this is also another trend we see here in our industry, this evolving from a pure commodity provider to a much more integrated player, which can provide towards the customer more sophisticated solution rather than pure energy and gas. And we have such solution in our portfolio. And now, of course, with the data program in place, we get much easy live access towards all these reports regarding our customer data. We're trying to do the same for the grid side. To run this sanity program, it's going a bit more slowly on the grid, you know, from different reasons. As I said, lack of skills, probably not really the right prioritization. But one of the main topics we have here is actually the automations reports of the data we have to transmit to the regulatory bodies, right? So this is actually happening sometimes on a weekly basis, monthly basis. It's a pretty recurrent process, has been done manually up until now. And this is actually one of the main focus now, to really make sure that the data we are putting in the system can be run in an automated way, and nevertheless the data are also correct. So for me, it was quite a high priority to set up such data sanity, data governance program. It's now business as usual, I would say, but it comes with a bit of challenge. First, you know, the adoption in the organization, people have to be convinced why they can be data stewards, data leads on their specific segments, requires a lot of communication and continuous awareness within the organization.
Fantastic. And just to sort of make you not feel like that you're the only one, we have contracts that were in drawers in our National Grid house, which we needed to digitalize when we started doing our CRM system as well. So we're in the same place, and we only found that out when we were moving office. So to Lasse, up on that, I know you're doing a lot of work in the DSO space, sort of bringing together and contextualizing data for a platform that you're putting together. So I suppose what we've found is that our data, our historic data, is really quite poor, and actually it's quite difficult to automate anything and to learn. How are you seeing that across the clients you're working with and the platform that you're working on?
Yeah, I think that's a reflection that we hear from almost every single grid operator we work with, and I guess that comes down to grid being not built in a day. Some parts of the grid are really old, and documentation therefore too. So I think what we need to make sure is that we don't use data quality as something that makes us just postpone digitalization because we see it as a hurdle that is impossible to overcome. But that we use digitalization to inform ourselves about our data quality. Where do we have the biggest gaps? Where do we have the most blank fields in our asset documentation? And how can we amend that in the most automated way possible? So we see that a very positive by-effect of working with the solution we're building now is that when we're contextualizing data, it becomes so much easier to understand how far away are you from, take example, a grid model that converges when you export it in a certain format or something like that. A very concrete example, but a solution like this and getting started with digitalization really provides you with some guidance really on data quality, and I think that's first step, making sure you don't use it as it becomes something you just push in front of you and makes you postpone all good initiatives. So, but obviously, David, as you mentioned, we see this a lot. It has to do with the nature of the grid itself. But getting started and providing insights on how to deal with data quality, I think it's a better approach than just using it as a
blocker. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
indeed. I think that's the those are the three layers, aren't they, in effect? So if you can automate the data quality, then fantastic. If you can gathering that data, or if you do have to go back to a manual process, then let that be the last step that you have to take to be able to do it. So Philipp, obviously with the work that you're doing, you're supporting a lot of clients to sort of move their data onto cloud services and support their transitions to that. I suppose moving more into the sort of cybersecurity space, so how are different people responding to that transition, and what are different people seeing as the sort of challenges, and how sort of quickly are people moving to cloud services for utility data?
Thank you, David. So first of all, I think the large and international companies, and we have 3 examples here on the call right now, are quite positive moving towards cloud. And they are acting internationally, and they see the added value of cloud and the benefits. The smaller ones, the mid-sized companies, are a bit more observing what you are doing, and I regard them as followers in that space. I would like to come back to democratization of data, what Thierry said, and also Andreea, who said she invested into the skills of her teams. We are supporting that democratization of data as well from our perspective, in a way that we provide technology which is so easy to understand and so easy to use that more and more non-technical people can use analytics and also machine learning capabilities. And one of the examples is I can do that myself. I have a business administration background. I'm not a programmer, and I can do some document AI stuff, or AutoML Vision, which is our analytics tool and artificial intelligence tool for analyzing videos and audios. I can do that myself for the purposes. So, which means that many of your colleagues, not only your IT department, but thousands of your non-IT people, could use data analytics tools just like Looker or Data Studio, or so, to get insights, to get visualization of data, which also helps you to get a more common understanding of the value of data, and also therefore a buy-in of the entire organization. I think that's one of the key points, that you get a buy-in not only on the IT part and on the digital part, but also in the various departments of your company and also of your top management.
I fully agree, Philipp. We are already using Google Analytics in our customer solution segment, also a lot of Power BI dashboards. So it's pretty easy, actually, even for non-tech people.
Very good.
And Thierry, inside in your career, sort of control of data must have been transitioning, and democratization was probably a scary thing a few years ago. how are you now seeing that in ENGIE and sort of giving power to the user in effect?
Yeah, over the last few years, and I concur with what Philipp and Andreea are saying, is that over the last few years, there was and I think it's still continuing, a move to cloud. And this is really helpful to democratize the access of data because if you think about any group, international group, and not only ENGIE, and based on my experience, there is so many companies trying to do that, but with on-premise solution, it doesn't really help, And the thing with the cloud technology is that it's really by click of a button, you can actually connect all your data sources and actually bring them all together. So there is still a struggle, with data management, and I think Andreea has also touched this point. And you need to come up with some really strong data governance, because at the end of the day, if you do not, let's say, take control of what you put in in your data lake, this going to be quite messy very fast, right? So you need to know what you bring and how to link it to what you have already. So I think it goes back to ontology, to data management, and master data management as well. So that I think there is, and I'm not talking about Google GCP. I think it's an issue for all the platforms. I think today is really how we ensure that it's consistent. The data that you bring together in such solutions are consistent and can speak together with a common language. And it's not only a technical issue. Actually, it's really something that needs to be let's say, tackled by the business teams, because they own their data, they know what they mean, and they can actually ensure that we understand. Everyone has the same understanding of their data, and to me this is really key, and this will bring much value in the coming years if you manage to do that. And at the moment, this is what we are doing at ENGIE. So I think the move is underway, but it's true that it's going to be a bit a long-term exercise, right?
Yeah, indeed. So I think obviously what we've been talking about there, democratization, is more internal for our companies, isn't it? And so it's giving data to end users to be able to do some understanding, to be able to provide the insights that they require. What about sort of external? So I think, all of us as TSOs across Europe are being pushed towards by our regulators, as well as hopefully running towards sharing our data and having a sort of open first mentality. Lasse, are you seeing that with the people that you're working with? And I mean, what's the sort of, is the hesitance, are the things blocking people to share their data? Because we're sort of in a place where we don't necessarily potentially trust our own data, let alone release it out for others to share. But this, won't it, if we are able to share our data more effectively across the industry?
I think, first of all, we see a slight difference actually between the TSOs and the DSOs, to be honest. Not really sure whether that's coming from data quality and being hesitant about sharing because of that. It might be, that's one hypothesis. But I think if you want innovation, if you want to spur new vendors and new players coming in providing next generation tools, sharing data, taking ownership of your own data, and not the vendors you have today owning the data more or less, or having it locked into their core systems, and making that available is just key for innovation. And I guess that's why the regulators are luckily pushing it. It differs a bit across regions and geographies. But I think, for instance, I think the UK is far ahead on that, at least compared to some of the regions we work most in. So there's stuff going on there, but I think it needs to move faster, and we need to make sure that we don't use either data quality or regulations as they currently are as blockers for this, because sharing it with externals in a secure way, obviously, really spurs innovation. And I think it also spurs, the just general perception of the industry, attracting new talent, attracting investor funding to build companies in this space as well. So, there's a lot of positive things that come from making this data available for externals as well.
And Andreea, like coming back to yourself and we've touched on using data democratization. How's that inside E.ON, and what are you thinking around that, and sort of the next stages on how you go even further potentially with utilizing your data and sharing it?
Well, we are, David, in a very close connection also with our headquarters, which is, of course, developing the newest, I would say, data programs. They try to adopt the latest technology when it comes to the best usage of our data. As I said, the main priority for us here locally was first, to set up this basic things, which I call to be the data governance, because again, without the right data in our system, then also some of the business decisions are not really the way it should be, right? So we can't really take the best decision here. However, I would say that our efforts will continue with this. As I said, those 4 pillars, data governance, data warehouse, data sanity, and analytics, are now really well embed with the business. Yes, there are still challenges. What you just mentioned now on the third parties and on the regulator side is also affecting us here in Romania, given the very, I would say, intense and complex regulatory ecosystem and the requirements that we are getting from a data perspective. But what is very important for me personally, and then of course here I'm also talking on behalf of my business colleagues, is really the right amount of data coming from our customers on which we can then tailor and customize, new products, new solution in their best interest. Because without that, even this development of the new solution, which we see now across the energy world, like, all the detectors, the smart, I would say, equipments for the housing on the retail side, and then as well for the B2B customer, all the energy efficiency solutions that we are trying to develop, everything in line now with the sustainability trend, which is in the middle of our energy industry transformation. It is based on data. So I would say the main focus will be to have the real data in our system cleaned up, sanity checked, and based on that to be able then to further tailor solutions, different price schemes, mechanism, and so on. This is the way we see actually the best business decision being taken. So our efforts, of course, are going to be really focused on that. Yes, together with the cloudification strategies that are also happening in our case here in Romania on the customer solution. I would say more than 75% of our infrastructure, it is already in cloud when it comes to systems and apps. On the grid side, at the very beginning, yet we are now assessing different business cases into moving into cloud, the different systems also there. So the right data makes the difference when it comes to the best business decisions, I would say.
Fantastic. I'm being told that there's lots of questions, or there's a few questions, but I can't see them. So I'm really sorry for anybody who's posting questions that we're not covering. I think with that, we're trying to get access for me to go into that and to be able to pick up some of those. I don't know whether the rest of the panel can see those on their chat. But if not, then I think what we'll do is if we do some sort of closing remarks from the audience, if that's okay. So I think just from everyone here, are you optimistic about the future of data and digitalization in the utility sector and the ability for us to democratize? And what important or new talking about in a year's time? What is the one thing that you would see us talking about in the 2022 conference on data? So I don't know if Philipp, you want to start?
Yes, of course, I can start. So first of all, I guess the exchange and sharing of data is something which is already underway. I'm just thinking about energy trading areas and also redispatching and balancing of grids where companies are already talking to each other and working with each other. I think there is a lot more to come. And if we think about professional API management between companies, and API management platforms to securely manage data and exchange of data. We can also think about convergence of different industries, also with mobility, for instance, or the smart city areas. Yeah, in addition, I guess we probably can also learn from other industries who monetize their data much more efficiently than we are doing in the energy space currently. And that's something I'm really thrilled of. And I guess we are on a good way, but it's still a long way to go. David, I guess you're on mute right now.
Sorry, Thierry, do you want to pick up? Sorry, thank you. Caught me.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yes, I think that what Philipp said makes a lot of sense. I think that data and digital will obviously transform. So there is a lot of things that will coming up in the coming months and in years on the energy and utilities sector. But it's also a huge. There is also huge room for opportunities, and I think this is what we are trying to capture on digital and data. So for me, the future will hold a lot of opportunities and surprises. So I'm really looking forward to it. And so when it comes to what I would like to see next time, of course, is sharing of data. Also sharing not only internally but externally, as you said, David. I think it's a really good point. There is a lot of data, and it's not because you share your data externally or even internally, but you are losing the ownership of your data actually at the same time. So there is a difference between sharing and giving, you know. So I think this is what I would like also to talk about. And as Andreea also mentioned, I really think it's important that we do manage our data more closely. There is a risk also of cyber attacks, but also is really important, especially when we are treating IoTs. So it's also really important as we move forward to have solutions that allow us to secure our data from this creation to its consumption, so from A to Z, and also this is something I would like to talk about because this is one of the obstacles for data and digital, and of course last but not least the adoption and the change management that goes with it.
Andreea, just if I pass over to you now, but there's also been a question around. Is it up to customers to create demand for a smart grid, or do we wait for larger organizations to make the transition first? So you're probably the closest to customers at E.ON. I wonder whether you can touch on that in your remarks.
It's a good question, David. Thank you. Thank you for addressing it. Well, I would say it's a bit of a mix. First, as I also said at the beginning of our panel, it's really important to actually look at the customer needs because indeed they are evolving constantly. I really like to make this comparison between the energy industry and the telecom industry because I see actually a very similar transformation that was happening in telecoms, 10, 15 years back, which actually the real transformation happening today in energy. And it's the same on the consumer side, right? They step out from their pure traditional way of consuming energy and gas to more sophisticated way of doing that. And they expect different things, right? They want everything smart. They want everything connected to their phone. They don't want to be able to call again the agent or be in our shops. They want seamless and friendly interactions with that. So it's important to be really close to customer, to capture that continuous feedback and to notice their developing I would say, habits. But on the same time, I think from an internal perspective, the way that we actually treating digital transformation, I would say both on grid and on the supply side, is as equally important, because we have to capture the momentum we have now in the market. There are opportunities out there, and without this proper transformation internally of our systems, unfortunately, that will not be possible. And because you also asked very well, actually, what will be the future? For me personally, the future is electric. E.ON Group has actually quite very high ambitions by actually 2050 to offer to all our customers green energy, so carbon neutral. And actually, in order to achieve that, we still have a long way. There are plenty of actions in place. If you look into the speed that, for example, the electric cars it's having across Europe, of course, more advanced in countries with more advanced infrastructure than the others. How do we prepare our networks to be able actually, right, to sustain all this energy consumption from an electrical point of view? Sustainability is another trend that I think would be nice to also touch base on it together with the data topic, because this is the beauty of this energy. It's in the middle of this transformation towards a much greener future, I think, for all of us. But without the right transformation efforts, well, it's still going to take us some time to actually get there.
Fantastic. We'll come back to the point on electric vehicles, I think, when we open up for some of the audience questions. But over to you, Lasse, for one future and what in a year it might look like.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I'm the question: are you optimistic about the future? Yes, for sure we are. But I think I'm concerned about pace and speed, and especially coming from the grid side. I think there's need for a step change there, more than just slow progression, and that's basically because of the grid importance in the energy transition, and making sure EVs can charge all over, and making sure we can reach our ambitious targets on renewable energy. It's not enough to only focus on the production side, of course. The grid is vital. So pace and speed. For future, I think just one reflection is that we now often talk about data quality and the data management, data governance, and sort of the building block, the foundation. I would like to see going forward that we spend more time on, what can we do with this, the use cases, the reimagining the processes. Because what we see is that the current processes are governed by existing systems. So the system decides the steps in the process, and that is very, very up for change in my opinion. And I think all this data coming, reaching the surface, being contextualized, that calls for a reimagining the way grid operators work. And I think we should. So yeah, basically, just again highlight the importance of grid and keeping up the pace in the digital transformation there.
Fantastic, thank you. And pace is something that worries me daily in terms of our ability to get moving with new products to develop, but also to get the right data in place. And it can be a major thing to do when you have millions of assets which you need to collect data on, and it's not an easy task to collect that data in the first place. I think there's been a question around, as the world transitions away from oil to electricity, how much mileage optimization opportunities is there in existing grid, and how much more capacity is required for growth? Now, from a national grid in England and Wales perspective, the Committee for Climate Change have sort of indicated that we'd need about 4 times the amount of renewable energy, and we'd need therefore around twice the amount of grid capacity to be able to support that in the future, to be able to and the heat, etc. I'm interested if anyone else has a perspective from their local sort of DSOs or any perspective about how the grid can cope and bring the sort of convergence of these technologies together. Probably Andreea, you've probably got the closest experience.
Well, the answer, I think it's pretty simple, and I'm not going to debate too much on it because we've been talking about it, David. I think the answer is intelligent grid. That's it, right? So making our grid intelligent, automate all the processes, make sure they have the right data connections in between, and here we go. It will be able to cope with all these challenges in the future.
Fantastic. Easy as that. There we go. It's all on our side. And then, does anyone else have a perspective on smart grid and how that can support the major increase in electrification? Go on, Lasse.
Just one comment from here, and we've worked with a handful of Norwegian and Nordic grid companies. So we see that there's actually, at least in our area, capacity still, but we need to know about that capacity, making sure that we're not operating by rule of thumb, but by data, and trusting that data and the analysis. We will for sure need to build more grid. And if it's 2x or 3x or 4x, depends on where the situation in the region, of course. But we will definitely need to build more grid, in addition to smart grid and utilizing what we have. So I think it's a parallel process, this. So, yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? So we still got different pathways to 2050, I think, and they will show themselves as we are able to optimize as much as possible the grid that we have. But it still seems like the grid is an asset that will be required. I think there's a couple of other. So there's just a really open one if someone wants to take this. So climate change remains the biggest challenge of our time. How can digitalization help achieve net zero emissions? And I think we've all covered different points on this. I don't know if anyone wants to just summarize that up.
I would just add, David, on top of what has been discussed, just to conclude a bit this question, that all these efforts that I would say every single DSO, well, energy and gas supplier must do towards this climate change challenge that we all share, right? That's why I did mention sustainability, because it is in our hands, some of these small efforts, right? The way we educate our customers to better consume energy, the way we try to bring much more efficient energy solutions on the market, the way we actually educate internally our people, externally our customer, not to print the papers anymore. Just some few small examples on which us as energy and gas suppliers can actually better contribute to a more sustainable future. And of course, it's also the overall electric cars trend, which is happening, that we as energy suppliers, we can support via, charging stations and a lot of information campaign on this one. So it's in our hands, little efforts that in the end will, I would say, would make a bit of a difference for our future.
Fantastic. But I think back to Lasse's point, we've got, this decade is critical over 2050. So I suppose we've got to balance that pace with the sort of incremental sort of nature of digitalization, don't we? But incremental means starting now, starting on, and building on top of those builds. Just the final question here is: are there any EU or UK policy initiatives along the lines of open banking for open energy data that anyone is aware of? From a UK perspective, I know that Ofgem have license requirements on the DSOs and TOs to be able to provide certain data, but I think that's in its infancy at the moment, and it's nowhere near as far as the open banking standards are, and not as prescriptive as that. So I don't know if there's anything else in the other European countries that you guys operate in.
Well, in France, the market is really regulated. So indeed, for gas and electricity, and the historical companies acting on those sectors are providing some information, really granular information, and it's public data, so it's in the open data. Let's say it's completely open. So this is something that we see. We see in France, and I think that some other countries in Europe are acting the same way. So really highly regulated when it comes to utilities and energy.
Fantastic. We've just been extended by 5 minutes, I've just been told. So I think if there's any more questions that the audience has, that'd be fantastic to see through. Anyone for the panel has anything which they haven't said, which they would like to jump in with now around this topic?
I think in the topic of sharing data and harmonizing data and standards, really, I think there has been a lot of work done, and I think the DSOs in particular have covered, the DSOs and TSOs have covered some ground on this, but at least in our home market, it's national. It's national agreements. It's national forums mostly. Norway is obviously not in the EU, but anyway, it's national dialogues and national activities. But just one thing on the EV side of things, which I think is very interesting, and being a Norwegian company and us coming from Norway, we have a sort of a glimpse, I think, into the future and what the future might hold in terms of EV. I saw some figures last week about new car sales. New car sales are predicted to be almost 100% electric in Norway by next year. So that's pretty close. Obviously, it takes time to sort of transfer the whole car park, obviously, but that means EV infrastructure, grid capacity, home charging, it's skyrocketing in terms of capacity requests, and grid operators are working as best as they can to accommodate this transformation and this change. And I think we'll see a tipping point. It's not linear transitions. It's suddenly everyone buys an EV. It's suddenly everyone charges. It's not, as we probably are used to, a linear, slow progression. We see more and more tipping points where suddenly just boom, and then you have 100% EV new car sales, almost. Obviously, in Norway, it's a special case, and government incentives and so forth. But I mean, I think it's a glimpse into the future. So come visit and ask us, and we have some interesting perspectives there as well, if anyone's keen.
Yeah. And I know that from National Grid we have Graham Cooper speaking in one of the later sessions today, and he's been key to the sort of EV policy change landscape, and sort of understanding the fast charging network and the requirements that will be required to allow for the EV charging, and having large scale charging stations as well as distributed charging stations around the network to be able to support that. So because it's not a single solution problem now. All of this panel, I think that there's multiple solutions that we need to distribute and do incrementally to be able to support across the whole of this. There's been one final question around smart meters. So I mean, the UK has been rolling out smart meters for a while, and I think this question is, they won't allow you to change supplier. Another installation is required when the next generation are available. That is obviously a problem in itself. I wonder whether anyone in their countries is seeing anything different in the smart meter rollout, and any lessons learned that could be adopted more universally rather than the first pass that the UK had on our smart meter rollout.
We didn't have any big challenges, David. Maybe I can just, share. I already shared with you some of the numbers from our customer base when it comes to smart meters. What I would say as a lesson learned, it's actually just an emphasis on the communication, right, on the benefits that the smart meter is actually bringing, right? Because there are still lots of customers out there which are not aware that, by having a smart meter, you can actually read and automatically send your data. You can get also customized tariff. You can have also a permanent monitoring of all your data consumption. And in the end, in this way, you can also control the energy you actually spend at your household. So I would say just a better emphasis on all these benefits that the smart metering is actually bringing towards the customer will make or will speed up even a better adoption. As I said, we still are a long way of reaching a full base with regards to smart meters, but important efforts has been done also on the Romanian side when it comes to implementation of the smart metering.
Fantastic. So I think with that, I'm going to say a big thank you to everyone on this panel. So to Thierry, Andreea, Philipp and Lasse for a really dynamic conversation today. Thank you. And for the questions that we've received, I'd say keep them coming throughout the day. I'm sure people can pick those up and people can answer those as well. And I hope, like me, you're really excited that data is the first topic that we've been talking about. And I think from what you just said, Lasse, about this we're talking about data still as being a foundational thing. It is a foundational thing. That's what we need it to be. And it underpins all of our digitalization efforts. But I would really echo your comment that I hope in a year's time, we're starting to talk more about the solutions and people being able to move and automate away from being able to have to talk about the collection of data. And just some takes from me. I mean, reimagination is a key concept of digital. Reimagination of process. So, that's a key concept that I'm sure will come up through us today. Changing consumer habits, grids evolving into intelligence platforms, DSOs and so more intelligent smart grids. And then just that takeaway that don't let data quality be a blocker to moving forward with your digitalization efforts. Let it help you expose those data issues and build on top of that. And I think that's a really strong takeaway from this session. So thank you all. Thank you to Thierry, Andreea, Philipp and Lasse for your session. And we'll hand back to Adam, I believe.